Chapter 1. Harbinger. Morning mist clung to the harbor like a shroud, and Captain Elena Vasquez knew it was an omen. She had sailed these waters for 23 years, and never once had she seen fog this thick in the middle of summer. It rolled in from the deep Atlantic with an unnatural persistence, swallowing the lighthouse beam whole and reducing visibility to mere yards. "Captain," called First Mate Rodriguez from somewhere in the gray soup ahead, his voice muffled and distant despite being only a few feet away. "The men are getting nervous. They're saying it's not natural." Elena pulled her weathered jacket tighter around her shoulders and squinted through the murk. The Mariposa creaked beneath her feet, a sound that had once been comforting but now seemed ominous in the unnatural silence. Even the gulls had gone quiet. "Superstitious fools," she muttered, though her own heart hammered against her ribs. Into decades of commanding merchant vessels, she had learned to trust her instincts, and every fiber of her being screamed that something was wrong. The fog had appeared 3 days ago, rolling in just as they'd finished loading their cargo of coffee beans and textiles in the port of Cartagena. What should have been a routine journey to Miami had turned into a nightmare of dead winds and impenetrable mist. They had been drifting for hours, their GPS spinning wildly, compass pointing in impossible directions. "Captain," Rodriguez's voice cracked with urgency, "you need to see this." Elena made her way carefully across the slick deck, following the sound of his voice. The fog seemed to part slightly as she moved, as if responding to her presence. She found her first mate at the starboard rail, his face pale as parchment. "There," he whispered, pointing into the mist. At first, Elena saw nothing but the familiar gray wall that had surrounded them for days. Then, gradually, a shape began to emerge from the fog, dark, massive, and utterly silent. It was a ship, but unlike any vessel she had ever seen. The hull was black as midnight, so dark it seemed to absorb the weak light filtering through the mist. No barnacles clung to its sides. No rust stained its perfect surface. It moved without sound, without the familiar hum of engines or the creak of rigging. Most unsettling of all, it flew no flag, bore no name, and showed no signs of life aboard. "How long has it been there?" Elena asked, her voice barely above a whisper. "I don't know," Rodriguez replied. "I looked away for a moment, and when I looked back, it was just there, like it had always been there." The black ship was enormous, easily twice the length of the Mariposa, with a sleek, modern design that seemed to belong to no particular era. Its bridge rose like a dark tower, its windows black as the void between stars. No lights showed anywhere on its surface, yet Elena could sense it was very much alive. "Try the radio," she ordered. "Standard maritime frequencies." Rodriguez hurried to the radio room while Elena remained transfixed by the sight of the mysterious vessel. As she watched, she could swear she saw movement in those dark windows, shadows shifting, shapes that might have been human, but somehow weren't quite right. "Captain," Rodriguez called from the radio room, his voice tight with fear. "The radio's dead, complete silence on all frequencies. Even the emergency beacon isn't working." Elena's blood turned to ice. Maritime law required all vessels to monitor emergency frequencies. For there to be complete radio silence could only mean one thing: they were alone out here, cut off from the rest of the world. She turned back to the black ship, and her heart nearly stopped. It was closer now, much closer, though she hadn't seen it move. The massive vessel loomed over them like a dark mountain, its hull so close she could have reached out and touched it if she'd had the nerve. "All hands on deck," she commanded, finding her voice. Now, the crew of the Mariposa assembled quickly, their faces reflecting the same mixture of fear and bewilderment that Elena felt. There were 8 of them in total: herself, Rodriguez, the engineer Martinez, the cook Petrov, and for able seamen, they were good men, experienced sailors who had weathered many storms together. But this was unlike anything they had ever faced. "What are your orders, Captain?" asked Martinez, his thick accent making the words sound like a prayer. Elena studied the black ship, searching for any sign of activity, any indication of the crew's intentions. The vessel remained as silent and still as death itself. "Signal lamp," she decided. "If they won't answer the radio, we'll try the old-fashioned way." Seaman Harris retrieved the signal lamp from the bridge and began flashing the international code for identification. What ship? What ship? The bright light seemed pathetically small against the vast darkness of the fog, and the black hull looming over them. They waited. The only sound was the gentle lapping of waves against the hull, and the nervous breathing of the crew. No return signal came from the black ship. Try again, Elena ordered. Keep signaling until they respond. Harris resumed his flashing, the light cutting through the mist in desperate, rhythmic bursts. Still nothing. The black ship remained as silent as a tomb. Then, without warning, something changed. The fog began to thin, not gradually but in sudden, dramatic swirls. The air grew colder, and Elena could see her breath misting in the suddenly frigid air. The temperature had dropped 20 degrees in as many seconds. "Captain," whispered Petrov, the cook, his Russian accent thick with fear. "Look at the water." Elena looked down and gasped. The sea round them was changing color, shifting from the normal blue-green of the Caribbean to something darker, more sinister. The water was turning black, as if ink were spreading through it from some unseen source. "It's coming from there." "Ship," Rodriguez observed, his voice barely audible. "The black water is spreading from underneath their ship, indeed." The dark stain in the water seemed to originate from the mysterious vessel, spreading outward in ever-widening circles. Where the black water touched the hull of the Mariposa, the familiar blue paint began to fade, as if the color were being drained away. "Start the engines," Elena commanded. "We're getting out of here." Martinez scrambled toward the engine room, but before he could reach it, the black ship finally showed signs of life. Lights began to flicker on, not the warm yellow glow of normal ship lighting, but a cold, blue-white radiance that seemed to emanate from the vessel itself rather than from any visible source. And then they heard it, a sound unlike anything in Elena's experience. It was part mechanical hum, part organic pulse, like the heartbeat of some vast, mechanical creature. The sound seemed to come from everywhere at once, vibrating through the hull of the Mariposa and into the bones of everyone aboard. "The engines won't start," Martinez called from below. "Everything's dead, even the emergency generator." Elena felt a cold fist close around her heart. They were trapped, helpless, at the mercy of whatever commanded the black ship. The mysterious vessel had somehow drained the power from their own ship, leaving them defenseless. As if responding to her thoughts, a section of the black ship's hull began to iris open, revealing a docking bay that glowed with that same unsettling, blue-white light. The opening was easily large enough to accommodate the Mariposa, and Elena realized with growing horror that they were being drawn toward it. "Drop anchor," she ordered desperately. "All hands, drop anchor now." The crew scrambled to obey, but their efforts were useless. The anchor chain played out fully, then went slack. They were no longer floating in water, but being lifted, pulled inexorably toward the yawning maw of the black ship. "Captain," Rodriguez said quietly. "What do we do?" Elena looked at her crew, these men who had trusted her to keep them safe, who had followed her through hurricanes and hostile waters. She had no answer for them. Whatever was happening was beyond her experience, beyond anything in any maritime manual or sailor's tale. The Mariposa was drawn into the black ship's docking bay with surprising gentleness. The blue-white lights surrounded them, and Elena was surprised to find that the air inside the larger vessel was warm and breathable. The docking bay was enormous, easily capable of holding a dozen ships their size, yet they were the only occupants. As soon as they were fully inside, the iris door sealed behind them with a soft hiss. They were trapped within the belly of the black ship, cut off from the outside world and at the mercy of their mysterious captors. "Look," whispered Harris, pointing toward the far end of the docking bay. Figures were approaching, tall, humanoid shapes moving with an odd, gliding gait. They were dressed in form-fitting suits of the same midnight black as the ship itself, their faces hidden behind masks that reflected the eerie light. Like dark mirrors, Elena stepped forward, drawing on 23 years of command experience to project an authority she didn't feel. "I am Captain Elena Vasquez of the merchant vessel Mariposa. I demand to know why you have detained my ship and crew." The figures stopped a few yards away, and Elena could see herself and her crew reflected in their faceless masks. For a long moment, There was only silence. Then, one of the figures stepped forward and spoke in a voice that seemed to come from everywhere and nowhere at once. "Welcome aboard the Nemesis," it said. "You have been selected." "Selected for what?" Elena demanded. "To witness the end of your world." The words hit Elena like a physical blow. Round her, she could feel her crew's fear escalating into panic, but she forced herself to remain calm, to think clearly. Whatever these beings were, whatever they wanted, her responsibility was to her crew. "We're just merchants," she said. "We carry coffee and textiles, nothing more. We have nothing of value to you." The figure tilted its head, and Elena caught a glimpse of something that might have been amusement in its posture. "You misunderstand. Your cargo is irrelevant. You are here because you were in the right place at the right time to serve our purpose, which is to bear witness, to carry word of what is to come. Your species has reached the end of its permitted development. The harvest begins now." Elena felt her blood turn to ice. "Harvest, your planet has been cultivated for millennia, guided and shaped to produce the optimal conditions for what you call human civilization. That experiment has reached its conclusion. The time has come to reap what has been sown." Behind her, Elena could hear Rodriguez praying softly in Spanish, his voice shaking with terror. The other crew members were silent, frozen by the implications of what they were hearing. "You're going to kill everyone," Elena said. "It wasn't a question." "Not kill," the figure corrected. "Harvest, your species will serve a greater purpose than you could ever achieve on your own. You should be honored. And us, what happens to us, you, will be returned to your world to spread the word, to prepare your species for what is coming. Fear makes the harvest more efficient." Elena's mind raced. If what this creature was saying was true, if some alien force was preparing to harvest humanity, then her crew's survival depended on her ability to think clearly and act decisively. "How long do we have?" she asked. "The process begins in 7 of your days. It will take approximately 1 of your years to complete. By then, every human on Earth will have been processed. 7 days." Elena felt the weight of that knowledge settle on her shoulders like a crushing burden. 7 days to warn the world, to somehow prepare for an invasion that sounded utterly hopeless to resist. Why tell us this? Why not just harvest us now? Because fear is a catalyst. It accelerates the biochemical processes that make your species valuable to us. A terrified population is a more useful population. Elena looked back at her crew, seeing her own despair reflected in their faces. They were fishermen and sailors, not warriors or scientists. What could they possibly do against beings capable of building ships like this, of controlling the very elements themselves? But she was still their captain, and she would not abandon her duty to them or to the billions of innocent people who had no idea what was coming. "We'll need provisions," she said. "Fresh water, food, fuel for our engines. Of course, you will be given everything you need to reach your destination and spread our message. The Nemesis will escort you to ensure your safe arrival." Elena nodded, her mind already working on the problem. 7 days wasn't much time, but it was something. If they could reach port, if they could somehow contact the authorities, warn the military, the scientists, anyone who might be able to help. It was a desperate hope, but it was all they had. The figure gestured, and other masked beings began moving toward the Mariposa. "Your vessel is being prepared for departure. You will find your engines restored and your supplies replenished. Do not attempt to deviate from your course or communicate with other vessels. The Nemesis will be watching." As the crew of the black ship worked on their vessel, Elena gathered her men around her. "Listen to me," she said quietly. "I know this seems impossible, but we have a job to do. We're going to get home, and we're going to warn everyone we can. We're going to give humanity a fighting chance," Captain Rodriguez said, his voice hoarse with fear. "What if they're right? What if there's nothing we can do?" Elena looked at each of her crew members in turn, seeing the same question in all their eyes. What if humanity was doomed? What if this was truly the end? "Then we'll go down fighting," she said, "but we don't give up. We never give up." The iris door of the docking bay was opening again, revealing the fog-shrouded sea beyond. The Mariposa was ready to depart, her engines humming with restored power. Whatever technology these beings possessed, They had indeed kept their word about the provisions and repairs. As they prepared to leave the black ship, Elena took one last look at the mysterious vessel that had changed everything. The Nemesis was a harbinger of doom, a messenger of humanity's end. But it was also, perhaps, the key to their salvation. 7 days, the countdown had begun. The Mariposa emerged from the black ship into the clearing fog, and Elena could see the familiar stars appearing overhead. Behind them, the Nemesis followed like a dark shadow, a constant reminder of the impossible task that lay ahead. As they sailed toward home, Elena began to plan 7 days to save the world, 7 days to prepare humanity for a harvest that would determine the fate of every living soul on Earth. The black ship had delivered its message, and now the real work would begin.